the year 65 AD, a Roman philosopher sat in his villa, knowing his death was imminent. The Emperor Nero had ordered his execution, and as was customary for nobility, he was granted the privilege of taking his own life. As he opened his veins in a warm bath, surrounded by friends frantically recording his final words, Lucius Annaeus Seneca remained remarkably composed. He spoke not of regret or fear, but of the very principles he had spent his life teaching, that death was merely the conclusion of a story, whose quality mattered far more than its length. Every new thing excites the mind, he said, but a mind that seeks truth turns from the new to the old and finds itself at home. In his final moments, Seneca embodied the philosophy he had preached, that a life well lived was not measured in years, but in how those years were spent. Seneca's death was not tragic because it came too soon. He was nearly 70, but rather it was profound because he faced it having lived according to his deepest convictions about time, mortality, and meaning. Throughout his life, he had argued that most people live as if they were immortal, squandering their days on trivial pursuits while complaining they never have enough time. It is not that we have a short time to live, he wrote, but that we waste a lot of it. Born into wealth in Cordoba around 4 BC, Seneca seemed destined for a life of privilege and ease. His father was a renowned rhetorician, his family well connected in Roman society. Yet from an early age, Seneca was drawn to philosophy, specifically to Stoicism, which promised not abstract theories but practical wisdom for navigating life's inevitable challenges. This was not the philosophy of dusty libraries and academic debates, but a living practice that demanded daily application. Where others saw philosophy as an intellectual exercise, Seneca saw it as an urgent necessity. Time, he realized early, was the one resource that could never be reclaimed, never be earned back, never be borrowed or stolen from others. What made Seneca's insights particularly powerful was that they emerged not from a life of monastic withdrawal, but from the messy complexity of Roman political life. He served as an advisor to emperors, amassed considerable wealth, and navigated the treacherous waters of imperial politics. He knew firsthand the seductive power of busyness, the way ambition could consume decades, the ease with which one could mistake motion for progress. Nothing, Lucilius, is ours, except time, he wrote to his friend. Nature has given us possession of this one thing, so fleeting and slippery that anyone who wishes can deprive us of it. The paradox that Seneca identified was this: while everyone acknowledged that life was short, almost no one acted as if it were true. People spent their days as if they had thousands more in reserve, deferring their dreams, postponing joy, trading their hours for things that, in their final moments, would seem utterly worthless. They lived, as he put it, as if they were organizing their lives for a future that is not guaranteed, while neglecting the present that is. Consider the average person's relationship with time. They rise each morning already behind schedule, rush through breakfast while scrolling through updates from lives they'll never live, sit in traffic dreaming of being somewhere else, spend their workday watching the clock, then collapse in the evening too exhausted to pursue what they claim matters most. Weekends vanish in a blur of errands and obligations. Years pass like this, each day a carbon copy of the last, until suddenly they're asking where their life went. Seneca would have recognized this pattern immediately. Life is long enough, he insisted, if you know how to use it. But what does it mean to use time well? For Seneca, it began with a fundamental recognition that we are dying every day. This wasn't morbid pessimism, but liberating realism. Each moment that passes is a small death, a portion of our life that will never return. Once we truly grasp this, Seneca argued, we stop living as if we had unlimited tomorrows and start treating each day with the reverence it deserves. Let us prepare our minds as if we'd come to the very end of life, he advised. Let us postpone nothing. Let us balance life's books each day. This daily reckoning with mortality might sound grim, but Seneca saw it as the key to joy. When we acknowledge that our time is limited, suddenly, the present moment becomes infinitely precious. The conversation with a friend, the walk in the garden, the quiet hour with a book. These are not preliminaries to life, but life itself. The The person who understands this stops racing towards some imagined future happiness and discovers that contentment was available all along, hidden in plain sight within the present moment. Yet Seneca was no naive optimist. He understood that external circumstances could rob us of time. Illness could strike, political upheaval could upend our plans, loved ones could die unexpectedly. But he distinguished between time taken from us and time we give away. The former was beyond our control. The latter was entirely within it. And it was the latter, he observed, that constituted the vast majority of our losses. No one sets a value on time, he wrote. All use it lavishly as if it costs nothing. The wealthy merchant who works 80-hour weeks to afford luxuries he never has time to enjoy. The social climber who spends decades cultivating relationships with people she doesn't even like. The academic who publishes papers no one will read to secure a position that brings him no satisfaction. All are trading their irreplaceable hours for currencies of questionable value. They are, in Seneca's vivid phrase, dying for the sake of making a living. But if this is how not to live, what did Seneca propose instead? His answer was deceptively simple. We must become philosophers of our own lives. This didn't mean retreating to an ivory tower, but developing the wisdom to distinguish between what truly matters and what merely seems urgent. It meant regular self-examination, asking ourselves whether our actions aligned with our values, whether our days reflected our deepest priorities. Every night before going to sleep, he suggested, we should ask ourselves, what bad habit have I cured today? What fault have I resisted? In what way am I better? This practice of self-reflection served a dual purpose. First, it prevented us from sleepwalking through life, from letting days blur into months and years without intention or awareness. Second, it helped us identify the patterns and habits that were stealing our time. Perhaps we'd discover we spent hours each day in conversations that drained rather than energized us, or that we'd committed to obligations out of guilt rather than genuine desire. Armed with this knowledge, we could begin the difficult but necessary work of reclaiming our hours. Seneca was particularly critical of what he called the disease of busyness. He observed that many people filled their schedules not because they had important work to do, but because being busy had become a mark of status, a way to avoid confronting the emptiness of their pursuits. The part of life we really live is small, he noted. For all the rest of existence is not life, but merely time. The busy person, constantly in motion but never arriving anywhere meaningful, exemplified this distinction. They had plenty of time, but no life. The alternative Seneca proposed was a life of deliberate simplicity. Not poverty, but a clear-eyed assessment of what we actually needed versus what we'd been told to want. He himself lived comfortably, but practiced voluntary hardship, spending nights on the floor and days eating only bread and water, not as punishment, but as inoculation against the fear of loss. When we realize how little we truly need, he argued, we stop wasting our precious hours pursuing excess. This philosophy extended to relationships as well. Seneca advised carefully curating our social circles, recognizing that we become like those we spend time with. Hours spent with gossips and complainers were hours that could never be recovered. Better to have a few deep friendships with those who challenged and inspired us than dozens of superficial connections that left us drained. Associate with those who will make a better person of you, he counseled. Welcome those whom you yourself can improve. But perhaps Seneca's most radical insight was that preparing for death was actually the key to living fully. This wasn't about becoming obsessed with mortality, but about using the fact of our finite existence to clarify our priorities. When we truly accept that we will die, not intellectually, but viscerally, everything shifts. The petty anxieties that consume so much mental energy reveal themselves as the trivialities they are. The grudges we've nursed for years seem suddenly absurd. The dreams we've deferred feel urgently important. Let us prepare our minds as if we'd come to the very end of life, Seneca wrote. Let us postpone nothing. Let us balance life's books each day. The one who puts the finishing touches on their life each day is never short of time. This daily preparation wasn't about morbidity, but about intensity, living each day as if it might be our last because, of course, One day it will be. The modern world would seem alien to Seneca in many ways, but his insights about time feel more relevant than ever. We live in an age of unprecedented distraction, where entire industries exist to capture and monetize our attention. The average person checks their phone over 90 times a day, spends hours consuming content that will be forgotten within minutes, and multitasks through experiences that deserve their full presence. We have more labor-saving devices than ever before, yet somehow feel more pressed for time than any generation in history. Seneca would have seen through this paradox immediately. The issue isn't that modern life is busier. Roman senators and merchants had plenty of obligations too. The issue is that we've lost the ability to distinguish between what matters and what merely makes noise. We've become reactive rather than reflective, allowing our days to be shaped by whatever notification pings loudest, rather than by our own considered values. We are, to use his phrase, everywhere and nowhere at once. The solution Seneca offers isn't to retreat from the world, but to engage with it more deliberately. It's to recognize that saying yes to one thing always means saying no to something else. That every choice carries an opportunity cost measured not in money, but in irreplaceable moments. It's to understand that the email that seems urgent will be forgotten in a week, but the hour spent with a child or a friend or in quiet contemplation might echo through a lifetime. This wisdom becomes even more poignant when we consider how Seneca's own life ended. When Nero's order came, Seneca was ready. He had spent years preparing for this moment, not specifically for execution, but for the general truth that death could come at any time. He gathered his friends, consoled his wife, and faced his end with the same philosophical calm he had cultivated throughout his life. His death was not a negation of his philosophy, but its ultimate validation. Yet Seneca's legacy isn't about dying well. It's about living fully. It's about recognizing that we each have a finite number of heartbeats, breaths, and sunrises, and that this limitation, far from being tragic, is what gives life its preciousness. A game with infinite lives becomes boring. A story that never ends loses all meaning. It is precisely because our time is limited that it matters how we spend it. As is a tale, so is life, Seneca wrote. Not how long it is, but how good it is what matters. The person who lives to 90, but spends those years in trivial pursuits, has had a shorter life than someone who dies at 30 having lived with intention and awareness. Length without depth is merely duration. A brief life fully lived is complete. In our current moment, as we rush through days that blend into one another, as we defer our dreams while chasing empty urgencies, as we scroll through other people's experiences rather than creating our own, Seneca's voice calls us back to what matters. He reminds us that we are not victims of time, but its stewards, that we have more agency over our hours than we typically admit, that the life we claim we want is available to us the moment we stop postponing it. The great irony is that by accepting life's shortness, we make it longer, not in years, but in depth. When we stop living as if we had forever, we start noticing the forever hidden in each moment. The sunset we usually ignore becomes a masterpiece. The conversation we typically rush through becomes an opportunity for connection. The quiet hour we once saw as empty becomes rich with possibility. This is Seneca's enduring gift to us, not a philosophy of death, but a philosophy of life. Not a call to resignation, but to engagement. Not a source of anxiety about time's passage, but a framework for making peace with it. He shows us that the answer to life's brevity isn't to frantically try to extend it, but to fully inhabit whatever portion we're given. In the end, we all face the same constraint, a limited number of days whose exact count remains hidden from us. We can spend those days unconsciously, driven by others' expectations and our own unexamined habits, arriving at our final moment wondering where the time went. Or we can choose awareness, intention, and presence, crafting a life that, however brief, feels complete. Nothing, Seneca reminds us, is so much calculated to inspire deep thought as the ability to examine methodically and truly each thing that happens to us in life. The choice, as always, is ours, but we must choose quickly, for as Seneca knew, and as we too often forget, life is short. The only question is whether we'll spend it wisely.